Welcome to Third Floor Views, a production of Chesapeake Family Life, where we talk about health, education, and living with kids. I'm your host, Janet Jefferson. Today, we're talking about stress, and we're going to talk about all sorts of stress that you may or may not be feeling right now. And joining us today is Dr. Shadonna Harris. She is a therapist specializing in client-centered therapy. Thank you so much, Dr. Harris, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
To our viewers, if you have any questions, feel free to just throw them into the chat and we will get to those as we can. As I said, we're talking about stress today and doing some focus on holiday stress, but hitting some of the other hot topics right now. So feel free to sort of put whatever questions you have in. All right, Dr. Harris, let's get started. So let's start first with sort of your classic holiday stress. How common is holiday stress? Especially in families, and especially maybe with moms.
Yes, holiday stress is quite common. I think I start to see people and things that they want to do around. I just want to make sure you can hear me.
Yeah, I think you're breaking up just a little bit.
Okay,
I
I think
hear
I
you.
froze. Oh no. Oh, there we go. Okay,
All right,
there we
I can
go.
hear you
I think
now.
I'm
Yeah,
back.
perfect. You're back.
Little snack. Yes. Okay. Yes. I was saying like holiday stress is pretty common. I start to see people talking about like the holiday times and stressful events coming up sometime, close to Thanksgiving, and it lasts at least until like Christmas, New Year's Eve, around that time. And so it's quite common. Some people term it as holiday blues because you have like all these kind of like expectations and things that you want to do, and sometimes they may be unrealistic.
Yes.
Mhm.
Um,
Exactly.
do you feel like it hits moms or the women and families harder than maybe men, or is it really dependent on the person or the family structure? Do you see it targeting certain people more than others?
Yes, I think it really does depend. I will say for women, there was a study done back in 2006 by the APA. They talked about like women experiencing more stress than men during the holiday times. And I think that's because of the implications of maybe these kind of roles that you think you're supposed to fulfill, like you're supposed to be the one that buys the perfect gifts, the one that does the hosting and all of the cooking, but nowadays things are a little different, and people of all different types experience this type of stress. And I think it comes a lot with, again, the expectations of what you think you should be doing. And of course comes financial stress because you're buying gifts and you're buying food, and that can bring about its own kind of, disappointment about not meeting those goals or those expectations. It's particularly for families, because you want to be able to provide, a certain type of atmosphere for your children. And if you aren't able to do that, or you feel like you can't do that to the expectation to which you want to do it, then you may feel some sort of sadness or disappointment or low feelings of self-esteem or insecurity.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
why is this happening? And the way that you're sort of voicing it right now makes me think like, oh gosh, like, are we doing this to ourselves? Is this something as simple as just
Uh-huh.
adjusting expectations? And I
Yeah.
don't know, how hard is it to adjust expectations? Is that something that's much easier said than done? Or can we just do
Hmm.
sort of a shift and be much
Hmm. Hmm.
happier, more relaxed people?
Yeah, I like the last thing you said, like much happier, more relaxed. Breathe a little deeper, not as shallow in the chest. But yes, I think we do a lot of times do it to ourselves, but it's also what we internalize by what we see. So you're seeing ads and commercials, and you're seeing posts on social media, and you see families together, and you feel like you should be with your family, or you should be buying X amount of gifts for your children, and if you aren't doing that, that means something about you. And that's not true. And that's something that you have to tell yourself, but it is easier said than done. Even when you tell yourself, the other part of yourself is like, yeah, but not us. So, like we we have to meet this goal. Like other people can settle, but we have to meet it. And it's like, no, you can only do what you can control, and trying to find the peace and happiness in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think the biggest challenges of holiday stress are? Is it these expectations maybe that are unrealistic that we set for ourselves, or are there other challenges that you see as well, whether it's relationship with family members,
Hmm.
or as you said, like the financial stress of it all, because there is
Hmm.
um, a lot of buying that seems to feel like you need to achieve, even though there's so many different kinds of gifts you can give. I don't know.
Hmm.
What are you seeing as the biggest challenges, at least within the clients within your practice?
Definitely social challenges. So as far as like being with friends, being with loved ones, um, and feeling like isolated or lonely. If you don't have that type of support, maybe you're in a state and your family is somewhere else and you're not able to visit them. And then there's mental health challenges that also kind of exacerbate those symptoms of loneliness. If you suffer from depression or anxiety, and then that comes with the feeling of isolation and loneliness. And also there's grief, so for anyone that has lost someone around this time or had a traumatic event happen to them around this time, that can come up as well. So yeah, I've seen across the board, all sorts of kind of, it triggers a lot of feelings, the
Mhm,
holidays do.
mhm. I imagine that a lot of people right now
Yeah.
are grieving, for people who are no longer here. With COVID being a huge challenge in this country
Mhm.
right now, and a lot of people are not going to be sitting at the holiday tables, which can be
Yeah.
really, really hard. And it's sort of maybe the first opportunity, or Thanksgiving and Christmas, or depending on whatever holiday you celebrate. You're going to see that there's a chair that's empty. So
Exactly.
I do want to talk about some of the other stretches that we're seeing right now beyond just the holidays.
Hmm.
But COVID right now is again coming, sort of rearing its ugly head, and we're dealing with a new variant with Omicron that
Hmm.
is now bringing anxiety up again in terms of where we stand. And I'm seeing at least a lot within the parents within my communities, we're talking about it all over again. And sort of, I think we were to the point where like,
Yeah.
okay, let's relax a little bit. We've got this.
Hmm.
But I
Hmm.
still have really young children who are not yet vaccinated. And it's just
Hmm.
like, oh no, here we are again. And
Yeah.
with holidays, all the travel and mingling of different groups of people, I think that adds a new challenge as well.
Hmm.
Um, what are you recommending in terms of with your clients, how to handle
Hmm.
this constant roller coaster of sort of this health anxiety that we're still facing?
Right. That's an excellent question. I ask myself that as well. Sometimes me and my clients commiserate together because we're all in it, and we all have different emotions at different times. Things change from day to day, and I think with the holidays being around, one of the things is just to try to make the best of the situation that you have and trying to be as comfortable with every situation that is, so if you're choosing to be with family, trying to do that as safely as possible and as comfortably as you can. And if you're choosing not to be with family and choosing to either Zoom or finding a way to still be in contact so that you can still see each other and have that kind of interaction, then that's something you can consider as well. It's kind of like thinking outside of the box of kind of like what we were talking going to be your new normal. And what will that look like in regards to how you go about your life and how you can make it as fulfilling as you can for yourself and your family.
Mhm, mhm. One of the other
Yeah.
challenges that people are facing right now, and even
Mm,
specifically today, is we've seen, more increase in violence across the country in a lot of different ways and for a lot of different reasons. But right now, today there was a threat all over Maryland that there might be some school violence. And so I know that a lot of the police departments have done a tremendous job in sort of looking into that and trying to make things as safe as possible. But parents are still receiving these
mhm,
letters from principals saying, "Hey, this is happening. We want you to know that we're
mhm,
doing what needs to happen, but this is a conversation that's out there." And parents now are
mhm,
thinking, like, on top of all these other stressors, now I'm also thinking about school
yeah,
violence, and it's right here. It's right. I'm receiving a letter from my principal tonight about school
mm,
tomorrow. Um,
mhm,
it's it's yet another stress in this moment. Do you, when you're talking to your clients, when you're thinking about violence as a possibility, and
mhm,
when it feels so abstract because you don't know where it's coming from, it could be from a stranger, or someone that you, an acquaintance that you don't know very well, and then you're also thinking about your
mhm,
children, like, I'm sending my children out into the world, and I am trying to balance risk with the reward of in-person education.
mhm,
How do you talk to your parents about this constant anxiety of violence
mm,
that
right.
we're seeing now all the time everywhere?
Mhm. Well, when I normally talk to clients about anxiety, it's about what is the anxiety about? What is the end result? And a lot of times it's the thinking pattern to get to like the worst case scenario or catastrophizing the, possible outcome of what could happen. And so I think there is a difference between trying to be prepared and have all of the facts and make sure everyone is safe, and then having this kind of thought process of the worst case scenario and then getting caught up in the anxiety of that and acting as if that worst case scenario has already happened. So trying to figure out the realistic goal of, I want my child to be safe. What does that look like? What are the things that I can control, to make sure they're safe? If that's talking to the school, so to feel like they're going to be safe. And there's still going to be that anxiety, because they are your children, so that's never really truly going to go away. But just managing and knowing that, you did what you can in your control.
Yeah, I think that's a good reminder that, we can't control everything, and we have to, um, you could worry about anything and everything, and but there's only certain things that we can control. So change what you can control and feel empowered by that. But then you just sort of
Yeah.
have to walk away, right? And sort of be like, okay, these are the decisions
Yeah.
I'm making, and I have
Mhm.
to be okay with that.
You do, and that's the hard part, is being okay with the decision, because we always want to look back and be like, oh, I could have done something else, I could have made a different decision, but you know it's okay. There is another side to that.
Mhm, mhm. Um, so we've talked about a lot of different challenges that parents are facing right now. You know, would you say that, all these different stressors, when you're trying to manage that, would you manage each one individually, or at the end of the day, is it just stress and you have to manage it more or less the same way? Um,
Right.
or does it really matter what kind of stress we're talking about, do you think?
Yeah, I think it is a mix, a combination of that. It is overall a general stress. But at the same time, it is, I tell my clients, you call them certain type of hours, right? So from this time to this time, I'll think about the stressful event and the things that I need to do about it. And then after that, I'm going to throw it over here and not think about it, because there's nothing I can actively do about it. A lot of times when you're stressing about something that you're thinking about the possibilities and outcomes, and you can't put any action into making those outcomes a possibility or whatever. So that brings about its own anxiety and stress. So again, recognizing things that you can control, putting action into things that you can, engage in, and the things that you can't, figuring out a way to have peace of mind with that. Again, easier said than done, but the awareness of that you can do that, and it is okay to have peace of mind with things that you can't control. Then you can start to think about it in that way.
Right. It sort of reminds me of striking that work-life balance. Like, okay, I'm allowed to
Mm,
worry about this, or I'm allowed to work on
right.
this problem from 9 to 5 or whatever you decide,
Hmm.
like your hours that you're going to work on this problem. And then it's like, okay, walk away. I have
Hmm.
other things to do. And that's really
Yeah.
helpful. Or like the sort of sports psychology of leave it on the field. Like you're in the
Yeah.
game, you're playing the game, and then it's, what happens, happens. And then at the end, you just have to walk away. I think that can
Yeah.
be helpful and maybe even empowering for some
Hmm.
people. So
Yeah, definitely.
what are some suggestions, some maybe tangible suggestions that you might have for
Hmm.
I guess one, let's start with prevention. Like, how can you
Hmm.
prevent stress? Is there a way that you can sort of set yourself up and
Hmm.
make things a little bit easier for yourself? And then of course my
Hmm.
follow-up question would be like, okay, you're already stressed. Now what? Like, what are some ways that you can um, find a way to de-stress?
Right. I think one of the big ways to prevent stress is learning how to say no
Mm,
to things and not stretching yourself too thin. A lot of us, tend to be very kind and very giving, and that's great when you have something to give, and if you're giving from yourself and you don't have that energy to give, you need to reserve some for yourself. The categories of stress and anxiety, maybe even resentment, because people don't recognize that you're stressed out, because you keep doing for others. So now you have to learn how to do for yourself. It's personal experience. So then once you're already in it, other things are helpful, like letting someone know, expressing that you are feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling stressed out, seeking that support, letting someone know that you need time for self-care. You need that time to be, just with your own thoughts. Therapy, of course, is great because you can process those emotions and those feelings, figure out the triggers for your stress, and figure out how you can then again prevent those stressful situations.
do
And
you
then grounding techniques, which
do you have any tips for people who don't yet know what their triggers are, like
mhm,
how they can help maybe be a little bit more aware of what their challenges are? Do you have tips on how to
yeah,
discover that?
sure. A lot of it is physical because stress and anxiety does manifest in the body. So paying attention to like situations that make you feel tense. Are you clenching your fist? Are you clenching your jaw? Are you sweating? Is your heart racing? Things like that, and that can come from just someone simply asking you to do something and recognizing that you don't want to do it, but because you are feeling some sort of obligation or whatever the case may be, you say yes, when you can actually, again, say no. So I think it's paying attention to those kind of physical cues.
Mm-hmm. And then
Mhm,
what you were mentioning grounding techniques. So once you're
mhm.
stressed, some things to maybe take it down a couple levels. What are some suggestions for grounding techniques?
I tend to deep breathing is perfect, and trying to figure out how to, I'm saying that at the beginning of our interview here, like breathe a little bit more deeper than a shallow breathing. Sometimes you can drink a glass of water and do deep breathing while you're doing that. There's a 5 things techniques. It's you go through 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear. The list goes down like that. I tend to suggest people going outside and literally just looking into the clouds and looking into the sky and being able to take in nature and take in the air and their own thoughts, no phones, no other person, and just being able to figure out how to be present in the moment versus thinking about past issues or future problems.
Yeah, I know that, when I was in a really stressful job and I found myself being unhappy a lot, I would be like, okay, I got to leave my desk. I got to go outside and take
Hmm.
a walk around the block,
Hmm.
and it's just a city
Exactly.
block. So it wasn't very big, but
Hmm.
I think even just changing your surroundings, and then also, being outside in nature, even if it's a city block, seeing trees,
Right.
hearing the
Yeah.
birds, that was helpful. Um, so one of my questions is, how do you realistically balance self-care and caring for your family? And so, this is definitely true during the holiday season when, we have increased stress, but it really applies to parents anytime. How do you
Hmm.
balance taking care of yourself and taking care of your family? Um, I know it's important, but oh my gosh, it seems so hard.
Yeah, it's a daily, struggle for a lot of people. And I think you literally have to take the time. You can't expect the time to kind of make itself available. You
Mhm.
have to take it for yourself. And that goes back to communicating about how you're feeling. If you're stressed out, if you're overwhelmed, if you're having low energy, and being able to communicate that to someone and figure out a way to take time for yourself to be with your own thoughts.
Mm, mhm. I hear a lot of what you're saying is sort of the power of communication, whether it's saying no to someone, no, I can't handle this one more thing, or sharing with your partner, I need time. I need time for myself to be a
Mhm.
partner, a better parent. Um, I hear that that's really, really powerful, and
Mhm.
that that alone, like taking that first step of just communicating how you're feeling, seems to be at least
Yeah,
send you down the right path. Do you think that that's
right.
about right?
Yes, because people, they can't read our minds. So they don't know. They don't know how we feel. And sometimes we can come off so strong that nothing can phase us and that we can just go through life and we know we don't need that type of support, but we do. Everyone does. And
Mhm,
sometimes it does take just a little bit of communication about that.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
My last question is sort of the the worst case scenario. So you've talked about one of the ways to handle stress is therapy, and that's always a great option. Um, Even if you're not stressed, it's great to have
Hmm.
someone to talk to
Hmm.
and bounce your ideas off of. But I did want to talk to you about, like, what are the red flags for when either yourself or a loved one is not doing well and really needs that extra help, um, whether it be therapy, or whether it be something a little bit even more aggressive. If you're worried
Hmm.
about someone hurting themselves,
Hmm.
what are the red flags that we really should be looking out for right now for both ourselves and our family members?
Isolation is definitely a big red flag. That's someone who is not answering phone calls, someone who's normally um, very responsive, you know, and they're not answering calls or they're not meeting with people. They don't have a presence on social media when they're normally posting all the time. A change in personality. Maybe they're more irritable, more kind of snappy. Um, Maybe there's a lot more crying, a lot of more emotions that are being expressed. Maybe some impulse control issues as well. Maybe they're buying excessively or engaging in like very risky behaviors. And then the last one, like you said, well, not the last, but one of the other ones I have here on my list is, feelings and thoughts of self-harm is definitely a big one. And with that, as a therapist, what I tend to assess, because there's a difference between like you have these thoughts about it and then you're actively seeking to harm yourself. So sometimes you have a lot of passive thoughts about, about suicide and about self-harm, but they don't have a plan to actually engage in those behaviors. They just need someone to talk to about it. And then they're actively seeking to engage in those behaviors. And that's when you would recommend them checking themselves into like a hospital, so they can be under supervision and observation and get the proper treatment that they need in order to deal with those issues.
hmm Do you have any suggestions for if you see some warning signs in a family member and they're not interested
Mhm.
in helping themselves or they deny it, but you're like, oh man, I really think you could benefit
Yeah.
from some therapy. If it's not even super extreme, you're not worried about suicide, but you're just worried about their mental health in general. What do you do when
hmm
you have a family member or a friend who is not responsive to seeking help? Do you have suggestions for that?
I think a lot of times it's one, supporting them and let them know, you understand that they are having a hard time, and then normalizing that getting help is okay. If you yourself seek help and you're comfortable with disclosing that to that family member or friend, that's a good way to normalize it and show that it has helped you in some way. Um, but at the end of the day, it really is their decision, because even when you come to therapy, you're the one. I think that tends to be a misconception. So you have to come in with the material and you have to be ready and prepared to do the work on yourself and get that introspection and self-awareness of the things that you want to change. So if they aren't ready for that, then therapy may not work. But if they have some inkling of being ready and being open, um, then it could definitely work for them. And
Mhm.
if it gets to the point of them being like a harm to themselves or others, that's because you want to keep them safe and you want to keep others safe. So, trying to get them into the hospital as quickly as possible so you can do that.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I think those are all such great tips, both for self-care, but then also for your friends and family when things are starting to seem really, really not
Mhm.
good. So
Yeah,
thank you,
of
Dr. Harris,
course.
for all these tips and tricks, and I think the biggest takeaway at least I got would just say no, and make sure that you're communicating your stress to others and find a way. You can't take care of yourself unless you sort of make that space for it. And the very first step is communication. So that was really helpful. Thank
Yeah,
you.
of
Um,
course. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you also to all of our viewers and listeners today. Make sure that you visit ChesapeakeFamily.com for all our local up-to-date information on home health and living for today's Maryland parent. This episode will be archived on ChesapeakeFamily.com in both video and podcast format. We're going to be taking the next 2 weeks off for the holidays, but make sure that you join us on January 7th with Hunter Clark Fields. She is the Mindful Mama, and you can learn how to incorporate more mindfulness into your life. So a lot of what Dr. Harris has been talking about, how to stay grounded and keep your life de-stressed, Hunter Clark Fields can help with that. So I'm Janet Jefferson with Chesapeake Family Life and Third Floor Views. Thank you